Today I have the great pleasure of speaking with Mr. Steve Varsano, who is one of the world's top brokers. Steve, love the setting, love the background. It's always a pleasure to see the jet business.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Could you give us an insight as to what's happening in your area of the industry at the moment?
Well, I mean, we're talking about two different my areas. We're talking about, Europe, or you're talking about the pre-owned aircraft market.
Go ahead.
So I'd say in the Europe itself is a little bit ahead of the U.S. as far as this coronavirus timing. However, the U.S. has gotten frustrated a lot quicker, so they're trying to come out of it quicker than Europe basically is coming out of it. I think both of them are running in parallel, and I think in the next 2 weeks you're going to start seeing more of the places opening up. Now, opening up in Europe means different than opening up in America. In Europe, we have every single flight, 90% of the flights are international. So there's a lot of cross borders that are closed. So people can't fly around like you can in America. In America, you can go and get on your private plane, fly around the US freely. It was not a big deal. But in Europe, you can't go anywhere. So unless you have a home or a passport in those countries, they're not allowing you to go into that country. So it's caused the problem in our industry to go and show airplanes, look at logbooks, go to maintenance facilities, things like that. So that's been a big obstacle that we've had to sort of overcome. But we're using this time basically to get in touch with more of the clients, more of the people around the world are working from home. They're more easily accessible, more they have more time on their hands, so they're willing to strike up a conversation. And that's sort of good because we're trying to keep, I'm not saying business going, but trying to keep the communications and the relationships going or to improve them.
I think at this time there is a great opportunity to improve and deepen the relationships with the clients that you have for exactly that reason.
Well, I think, a lot of the clients that we have been trying to get to, we're actually getting to them more now. So we're having the ability to sort of try to get in closer with them. Just before the problem was everybody was so busy and moving around and traveling. Everybody, in our businesses, I don't want to say is a gypsy, but people travel, they have multiple offices, they're on the road all the time. And I think, from my experiences, I'm much more productive when I'm in my office, my environment, and I can have all my things around than if I'm on the road. If I'm on the road, I find myself being reactive, not proactive. So when we're talking to people on the phone in their home office or even in their office, but there's more peace and quiet, they're just more apt to engage with us.
What's your sense generally then, because you are dealing with the world's movers and shakers with your client base, what's your sense in terms of their take on what's going on and what's happening in the markets? Obviously, we've seen some terrible slumps in oil prices, for example.
Yeah, I think, listen, in the pre-owned aircraft market, a lot of people saying it's on pause. I don't know if I'd say it's on pause. I'd say it has a pulse. And there are some deals that are definitely getting done, but by no stretch of imagination is it business as usual. There was probably about 25% of the transactions that were in play, that were sort of in a letter of intent, negotiating purchase agreements, or even airplanes in inspection, that fell out of bed. And people just canceled. They tried to use an out in the contract, and now there's issues trying to negotiate getting deposits back because they didn't have a real out to get out of the contract. But they saw an opportunity that they could renegotiate the transaction. And I don't think the sellers put up with that, and so they put up a fight, obviously, and they wouldn't release the deposits. People don't really know what's going to happen when this thing comes out of this coronavirus period. And anybody who is saying the market's going to go down X percent, Y percent, they have no clue. We don't know how many more airplanes are going to come on the market. Are there going to be a few more airplanes that are going to become available? Yeah, sure. But that's in the normal market anyway. There's always airplanes coming available. Will there be more? Possibly. But until we really get there, I think it's really not correct to start making guesses about what the market's going to do, what percent the prices are going to be coming down, because prices have come down so much in the last few years. They've, you know, and those airplanes that are sort of older than 5 or 10 years, they've already taken a lot of the residual value depreciation, and they don't have much further to go. You have the more expensive, newer airplanes, they have a little bit more you know, space to drop. And that's where you might see bigger percentages drops rather than the older airplanes.
It's an interesting time, and I know that you are a serial entrepreneur as well, Steve. Obviously, you're most well known for the very successful, wonderful jet business. For someone like you looking around at opportunity in the market, it is obviously, there's some terrible things out there, but there are also opportunities in a market like this. Where would you suggest that people could start to look?
Well, listen, if you want to stay in this sector, obviously there's potential acquisitions of not only airplanes, because you might have relationships with banks and people stop making payments depending on how long this thing drags out. And, you know, some people are going to get bailed out, like the airlines, and then some of the private 135 operators might or might not, depending on what their relationship is with the government people. But, you know, there are some opportunities to buy airplanes, to buy businesses, to merge, to, you know, to, in this quiet period, if you want to call it, in the last month or so, to think of new ideas, you know, game-changing type of ideas. How do we change marketing? I mean, a lot more people might have decided that I don't need these big offices anymore. And they, you know, I could be more working at home. More of my people could be working at home. Some might think, you know what, God, I am so glad to get back into the office with all my people because it just lost its mojo. And, you know, just different people have different impressions. So I think, listen, if you're in the entrepreneurial state of mind, you will come up with a new idea or a new opportunity to grasp. If you're an employee of a business, you're just going to continue being an employee and looking for your check at the end of the week.
Now, going back to that, you talked about being surrounded with your teams, and obviously I'm in a great position. I get to spend a lot of time around you and the jet business team. What are you doing to keep everybody motivated and everybody, you know, still engaged? Because it is difficult. I know you guys work in the office together all the time, and now everybody is working remotely. How is that? What are you doing to stay engaged and connected with them?
Yeah, that is a bit of an issue. And because we're one of the few aircraft brokers actually that has a physical presence, a showroom, we're the only ones obviously in the world. But there are some of my larger competitors that have big offices, and a big percentage of them might be in the office. But you're talking about, I don't know, 5 or 10 of these, the bigger players. And I don't think, you know, anybody's really enjoying that space, because you know, when you're in that office and everybody's together and everybody's talking with each other, making phone calls and overhearing other people's conversations, you know, you really have the benefit of learning much more than just from your phone call. So, you know, when I have all the people in my office, I think 1 + 1 = 3. But if you have one person working in an office in LA, one person in New York, one in London, one in Moscow, whatever, you know, it's 1 + 1 + 1 = 1 still, because there's no interaction between those people. Yeah, they get on a call, have a sales meeting, and they converse. But I don't know if they're really sharing all the information, because, you know, they want to do that transaction for the information that they've, you know, found themselves, and they don't want to share it. So I like having everybody in my office. And what I'm doing is I'm calling all of my employees every day, all my team, and the sales guys, the research guys, my IT, graphic design. We're still engaged, but there's no way it's as beneficial as if everybody's in the office. For me, I much more appreciate everybody in the one room.
And I can testify, the atmosphere in the office is great. It's a real team community environment there. How are you yourself, Steve? How are you keeping yourself motivated, engaged? What's keeping you going through this time when we are all socially isolated?
What's keeping me going? Trying to find ways to pay the bills. I mean, you know, that's absolutely the only thing that's keeping me going. I mean, I would be great to be a salaried employee, sit home and get your paycheck, you know, and you say you're working and you're working 10% of your time, making a few phone calls. But, you know, when it's your business, you have to make it work. And you don't know how long it's going to be before the next pay. And well, that's in our business generally. You don't know when the next deal is going to happen. It's never a steady flow. Obviously, there are times when you have really great, you know, months, and sometimes you have a low. So you get used to that kind of thing. But I think what we're trying to do is keep the relationships going. And actually, this week, we had actually a good week. We signed a mandate to acquire a ultra long range cabin airplane, and we just signed a mandate to sell an ultra long range airplane. Two different transactions. So they're not deals that are finished, but we signed the mandates this week. So that's, you know, there are people that are still engaging. They're not, you know, bottom fishers. I'm sure when they're ready to make the offer for the buyer, he's going to try to find a great deal, and the seller is going to, you know, have a little, you know, sticker shock when people start making offers at the beginning. Where he'll sell, we don't know, because until you have a real buyer with the deposit, you know, and a firm offer, not these would you take kind of, you know, ambiguous offers, but real solidified offers, you know, we'll see where the market is. But right now, we don't see them saying, I need to get out, get rid of it today. Not in our world, but there are people I know, and, you know, that are dealing with banks. And, you know, we're trying to follow those, and I'm trying to engage my team to find those opportunities.